Meeting to order. Please do the roll call.
Sally,
Present.
Chris,
Yes, here.
John, Heather,
Here.
Jim,
Here.
Philip, Marita,
Do we have any amendments to the agenda for today's meeting? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have any amendments to the minutes from the March 12th meeting? Hearing none, do you have a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do you have any public comments that are unrelated to agenda items for today's meeting? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. We have nothing on the consent calendar for this meeting. We have public hearing items. Our first is consideration of a rezone from rural residential to single-family residential at 1016 and 1020 Sandy Beach Road. Liz, there was a request about not changing the zoning on some of that in a letter that we got. Is that, what's the process on that?
Right, I think you got a couple of letters on this topic. It is a commission initiated rezone because it's based on a request to purchase property, so it's not their application to withdraw. It's your application to either make a recommendation to the Borough Assembly, or if you want to, I guess you could table it and it would die.
Yeah.
So those are your options.
Okay. What do the other commissioners feel on this? I mean, if they're not requesting to purchase the property, but not rezone now, it's kind of pointless to rezone, and they can go back in the future and change that zoning if they wish. Yeah,
So they're want to purchase 13B, 13A is behind them. They're surrounded by runway protection zone and Petersburg Airport boundaries. I don't see any easement into 13A for future.
Access.
Liz, yes.
Yeah, 13A has a aviation easement on it, so it cannot be developed.
I was also going to ask you a
the
question
seat of
on
the
that,
corners.
Liz, is I know in some areas in the code, they have different requirements if you're in the approach pattern on developable properties. Do we have that in our code?
Anything that FAA requires to be
Okay,
restricted is either not in our ownership or has a aviation easement on it.
well, it's like, there's property that's been developed down south. I ran into this years ago where they wanted triple pane windows and extra thick sheeting on the roof and everything else when you're in the approach. I was just curious if that was in our code, since this came up.
It is not in our code.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you. I'm just curious.
it's
Okay.
at your own risk, I guess, is what we're at.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, any other comments from commissioners?
I'll just add one more thing is just in general, whether the property is sold or not, or is applied for or not, I think you should consider whether rural residential is really the appropriate zoning for that area, considering that everything else around there for the most part is single family. Yeah,
Yeah.
with the exception of where the Bible church is. That rural residential zoning, usually we only use it after we've run out, outside of the water and sewer service. Because
Yeah.
we want to make sure that there's bigger lots to have on-site septic systems.
Yeah.
So that's the reason that I put in that other lot, because if we're going to consider one, we might as well consider the other one as well.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Thank you, Liz. Um, do we have any public testimony on it? Okay. What do the other commissioners feel about this one? You want to proceed and make a motion, or do we want to table it? 'Cause I kind of think that even though it is appropriate to change the zoning from rural residential, we don't know what they want to do yet. So it might be better to have them come back and request what they want to do later, I think, but.
I think that's what Mr. Lesh noted in his
Yeah.
letter.
So, do we need to have a motion to table it, Liz?
Yeah.
That's what I do, okay.
Or I guess someone could just not second, it would die for lack of second.
We even get.
We haven't made a motion
There's no
one way or
motions.
anything anyway yet.
I would prefer that you do something.
Yeah. We will, we just need to kind of know what we should do.
Move we table this for another meeting.
I'll second.
Well, let's table it as drop it completely and then they can reapply.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you please do the roll call?
Heather,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Philip, Chris,
Yes. Okay. We're moving on to an application from Marissa Collison for a conditional use permit for a home occupation at 104 Lewis Lane. Do we have any public testimony? Hearing none. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the application for the conditional use permit to allow for a home occupation at 104 Lewis Lane based on the proceedings findings of fact.
I'll second.
Discussion? I think it seems pretty straightforward.
I don't anticipate a lot of traffic or
No.
a lot of need for parking, so.
No other discussion? Please do the roll call.
Sally,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Philip, Chris,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to a consideration of an application from Sandy Beach Holdings LLC for a preliminary approval of a major subdivision at 410 Sandy Beach Road. Do we have any public testimony?
Dave Tinas, I'm the surveyor working with the Hearst family on this. Just
Okay,
happy to answer any questions if you guys have any concerns.
all right.
Okay.
Thank you.
I only have one question.
Yes,
So looking at the lot, there is the creek that runs pretty much down the middle of the property. On a day like this, isn't too big, but in record rains, and I've seen this happen on Cornelius, those creeks get really wide because this thing is fairly deep. It's gonna run right underneath that cul-de-sac. We're gonna put a 10-foot easement on the width of this creek. Is there anything in the spec about the size of culvert that goes in there? Too small a culvert, it's gonna back up. Just curious.
Liz, can you answer that, or is that a core question?
It's a public works question. So when the applicant provides plans for development of that road, they're gonna have an engineer look at it and recommend a culvert size. If the commission wants to, at the time of final plat approval, you can put an easement on it. My understanding is it's an intermittent creek, but I get it, it sure rains a lot here, so, yeah.
Oh, the internet,
Um,
looking at it.
And I notice it goes primarily through the property line, so it's probably going to be partially within that setback and then also in the right of way, so I'm not too concerned about actual construction happening on it, but the road is of concern. So that'll be to Public Works to make
Yeah.
sure that drainage is taken care of during review and approval of the plans and also during construction.
Ally, do you have a question?
Well, no, I guess not. I have a problem with these maps. And can you put it up on the screen that shows us the actual, what it is, where it is?
Motion before we discuss?
Usually, yes.
No.
I just, there were questions, so I figured I'd let Sally ask.
I like the bird's eye view,
Yep,
where it
let
is
me
in the
get-
neighborhood, other than a map.
What? Yeah, I'm not sure who.
Okay, I've got the general idea in my brain. Thank you very much.
Any further questions before we have a motion? Do we have a motion?
I move to grant preliminary approval to the Carluck subdivision with conditions of approval and findings of fact as presented.
Second,
Discussion? I think they did a pretty good job of dividing the lots to try to keep the stream area within in the setback and allow developable property around it. So I think that's a good job there. Trouble with it.
So
Yes.
once again, about this culvert thing. So the city has to say about the size of the culvert running underneath the cul-de-sac. But if the individual builds to the back of the lot, then that creek could run underneath their pad. Is there any stipulations about creeks running underneath pads or homes?
So generally, when we're going to issue a building permit, we'll talk to the property owner about drainage. But we don't really have much in the code as far as specifics on drainage. It just basically says allow for drainage, you know? So
Yeah.
there's nothing too specific in there.
Yeah, well, just from the history of Cornelius Lane and having built up there, my upper two neighbors, one sued the other because the culvert they put in the middle lot was too small and it backed up underneath the other person's warehouse and he sued for damages. So, I'm just wondering if we have any say as the city on the size of the culvert running, at the individual, when they build their pad, seems like it should be a certain size or at least a minimum.
we had to get a Corps of Engineers permit for our creek and a 40-foot distance from the creek to our house. They were very specific about that. I don't know if things have changed. That was 23 years ago, but it's still a big creek there.
Any further comments, discussion? Roll call, please.
Philip,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes. Okay. Consideration of an application from Brian and Alexandra Richards for replat of lots 3A, 8A, Block 30, US 1252, located at 203 Lumber Street and 13 East Lansing Street. Do we have any public testimony? Hearing none. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the Richards Laura replat with conditions of approval and findings as presented.
Second.
It looks pretty straightforward. They're trying to, it looks like they've got a couple of sheds that are the property lines on that they're trying to fix. It seems pretty clear.
All the
So-
property owners
Yeah,
concur.
so any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Sally,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Philip,
Okay, next we have a consideration of an application from Harold Medellin for replat of a portion of block 57 lots T 113 through T 119 of ATS 9 located at 110 South Nordic Drive. Do we have any public testimony? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
I move to recommend approval of the Medallion subdivision replat with conditions of approval and findings of fact as presented.
Second.
Discussion?
Well, I guess there's the question of the fire rating. I
I would just say there's not really a question. It's just what the fire code is. So
Wouldn't that only come into effect if they were to do a remodel or a add to the house? the size?
that's kind of what I was wanting to know.
it's different if this is commercial property. It's commercially zoned property, and it's different if it's residential and versus commercial. Generally, when we give variances on residential property, you don't go closer than 5 feet, and there's a reason for that, because then we have to start adding fire protection. So we try to keep everyone 5 feet off the property line. Personally, I just don't think we should compromise on
What's
fire
the-
life safety
What's the
issues.
distance between those two buildings?
It's less than 5 feet, so it's 4 feet, I think.
Yeah, and I think fire code is very clear that any building, any part of any building that is closer than 10 feet will trigger that fire protection.
It does trigger at 10 feet, and then as you get, when you're closer than 5 feet, then you start having to put fire
There's even
resistance
more,
rating.
yeah. It gets even stricter, yeah.
So seeing how it's commercial property, I know when we did the Harborway Parts building, we were required I think 2 5/8 along the property line. Would that change if him being a residential house?
Yeah, so it's R3, but still, once you get, residential use versus like a business use. So that's how we looked at it, but it still triggers a fire resistance rating. Once you get closer than that 5 feet, you do trigger that.
I have a
And then like if it was a different kind of business, and the closer you get, it gets to 2-hour rating than a 3-hour rating.
Mhm.
Then it, restrict the number of openings on and on.
Well, I have a question in that, I'm wondering if Harold, the applicant, thought that because they were not doing any renovations or reconstruction or anything like that, that they were grandfathered in as they are built. And if that's not the case, is he now saying that he would just like to still subdivide, but get rid of that portion of his request and leave it just the same. Is that what his letter is asking for? Because it sounds like he does not want to change that law.
He doesn't want to spend any money.
Yeah,
And I didn't know if there was any rights of a landowner for, grandfathered in rights if you're not making changes. But
But
the
you-
replat itself.
But
is
you
a-
are making a
that's
change by
changed.
doing the replat, yeah.
So I think I think what he's asking is if that's the case, because he doesn't want to do it, that he just wants to not subdivide that one portion, but go ahead with the rest
if,
of it.
if you were to leave it as, lot 118A and lot 5A as one lot, then would he still, that would trigger it or not trigger it?
No, we just leave it as it is.
Just leave it as is, because it'd be basically considered an attached structure.
It's a good question, but it's got enough separation, I think, that we wouldn't go back and do something because they're not making any kind of, they're not going to be within 5 feet of the property line
Yeah,
in between.
so the way to do it would be to amend this to leave lot 5A and 118A as one lot and approve the rest of the subdivision. Is that correct, Liz?
Well, you could do that, or you could approve it on the, that portion on condition that he puts up the firewall. And if he doesn't, then we can just approve it without that property line. And then if he wants to, we can approve it with the property line. Is okay with Dave?
Dave Penis again. Yeah, I think his wish is to eliminate that property line if the fire code condition isn't waived for this. So I think he would opt for leaving 118A and 5A as one lot, if that satisfies the requirements.
It sounds like that would, so,
Okay.
okay.
So I make a motion that we amend the application to not subdivide lot 5A from lot 118A and leave it as it is.
But proceed with the rest of the subdivision.
Yeah, just make an amendment to the
Okay,
motion. Just
Second.
okay. So,
Building code.
yes,
Hi, Joe Bertignoli.
Joe.
I just want to say something to the comments that I've heard. Waiving the fire code rights. You just don't waive safety. I'm sorry. And the grandfathered in thing, there's no such thing as grandfathered in. What you have had, when you put a lot line there, you measure to the property line. Right now, those two houses are 9 feet something, 9 feet apart. So if they put a property line down there, then the new rules kick in.
right,
And
but
it
they're now asking to not put that.
And if
property
they
line down.
don't put that, yeah, because then they'll have almost 10 foot of separation between the two houses, and that in R3, that's adequate there. It'll be adequate. in that.
Okay, so if the motion was amended to keep those two lots as they exist now,
Don't draw that line between those two houses.
Yeah.
and-
Right,
and
that's
then-
what we're
Then it would
saying.
satisfy for the rest of the lot, but I hate hearing it when somebody says waive
Yeah.
fire codes or fire rights,
Yeah.
It is residential and we want to protect our residents as well as our businesses.
verbiage
So-
was bad, you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
No, no.
you're on the same
Yeah.
page that if we
I-
go ahead and keep those two lots
Yes, and that's,
as is.
we're all in agreement on that one.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
yeah, I think fire is one of the biggest concerns, especially with the older buildings. And yeah, that we really need to not compromise on that. So, so on the amendment, can you do the roll call?
The amendment, okay. Heather,
Yes,
Sally,
Yes.
Philip, Chris,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Okay, and are we ready on the original motion? Okay,
Heather,
yes,
Sally,
Yes.
Philip, Chris,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Okay. Any commissioner comments? Any staff comments?
Yeah.
Liz?
So I wanted to get back to you guys about the Mickoff Highway Trust Land Office situation.
Okay.
So I heard back from the Trust Land Office regarding the right of way out there. And they said that, again, that Mental Health Trust owns the land, but that the Department of Transportation has a surface right for a right of way on that land, which is, I think, where we started at the beginning of this journey, that they had stated that. And so when they needed the subdivision done in order to sell the lots on either side of the highway, we did minor subdivisions so that we could approve those in one meeting. But the condition of that minor subdivision is that they would apply for a replat to dedicate that center lot to DOT, so that the actual ownership of the property would go to DOT as the right of way. So now they don't want to replat because they say DOT has a right of way. Well, they say DOT has ownership in the right of way. It's a surface ownership, but that if that right of way was ever vacated, then the trust owns the underlying land. I guess there's two things. We could just let it go. You know, the highway right of way is managed by DOT. And it will continue to be managed by DOT. I've actually called DOT 4 times and emailed them once with no reply on this. I know, so I'm still trying to get a hold of them to just get their perspective on it. So one option is just let it go. The other option is recognize that they're not fulfilling the conditions of approval of the previous subdivision and bring those subdivisions back up and have them explain why they shouldn't be terminated because they didn't meet the condition of approval. So
Is this true on all of the mental health or just that one subdivision?
you know, I cannot say because every time, I feel like every time I talk to them, it's a different, it depends on when they got the land and how they got the land and what was reserved on the land. So.
I'm just wondering, is this going to come up again in the
I
future?
mean, this has come up, like, I feel like I've been on an entire circle journey with them, it's there, it's not there, it's our land, it's their land, it's just a chase, chasing this moving target with them. And now they're like, yeah, we don't need to do this. But I just think it's very odd that we're going to allow, this underlying ownership of the right of way, which I don't think exists on the majority of the right of way. It might be there where there was trust land. There's some confusion, but most of the right of way is a clear right of way for DOT.
Yeah, I'm just curious if we're going to run into this again.
Possibly. Yeah.
So if we rescind that because they don't meet conditions, what's the ramifications? That throws it back on them?
Well, there's ramifications because those properties are under contract of sale. And so then the legal descriptions get eliminated, then the deeds are not clear and the title is not clear. So it kind of puts us in an awkward position because these people are kind of innocent bystanders that bought the property,
Yeah.
And so we certainly don't want to cause damage to them. But
If
yeah.
we rescind it, it gives them the opportunity to go back and clean it up once and for all though, right? Instead of like leaving this ambiguity.
Yeah, and I think in their view of the world, there is no ambiguity. They own the property.
Yeah.
In my view of the world, I don't want this piece of property stretching across the highway, that's kind of somewhat ambiguous. I don't think there's any ambiguity in terms of a right of way existing there, whether it's an easement, which is what I would call an easement, you know, when
Yeah.
there's a right, but then there's underlying different ownership versus what we would call a right of way, which is actual ownership of the land that's dedicated to the public, clearly dedicated to the public. So I can continue trying to get a hold of DOT, which I would like to do before we do anything, to see what their take is on it. You know, the trust land office, they're not asking anything, so if you want to wait and get a little bit more, see if I can get more information from DOT on their perspective on it.
I'm just thinking of, in the future, if this could lead to other problems as far as, if, for instance, the borough wants to run sewer or water or something out there, is that gonna be a problem because the only right of way is owned by the DOT? Not, and there's no, or is there an easement for utilities still set to the borough?
I don't know that there's an easement for utilities.
Because that, I just see future problems if this isn't resolved. I mean, it's gonna make it hard on the property owners for the short term, but I think in the long term, it's gonna solve problems for everybody. So that's my concerns, but I don't know how to proceed from here. So,
That battle will be between mental health and the state rather than,
Well, it should be, but, and it wages on, I believe, between the two agencies. I don't think there's agreement there on what the situation is. My concern is that, you know, we put a condition on a approval, and I don't appreciate that being ignored. In general, you don't want to allow that to go unnoticed.
well, I think we need to put some pressure on them to get this resolved. Because otherwise it's going to cause, I see it causing future problems.
Oh, here, Dave's going to save me
Yeah.
by saying something.
Dave Penis. I've worked with Keegan.
Yeah.
I think almost 3 years now. Just urge you guys to be as kind as you can with them in regard to this, because it's really taken a toll emotionally on them as well as their future plans. So if there's any way to resolve this without taking them back to having to create new sales agreements and everything again, it would be, I'm sure they would be very appreciative. I don't know if that's possible or not, but that's.
Yeah.
that would be my concern, would be possibility of future lawsuits. I know mental health is run by lawyers, and having dealt with them, they've threatened us. They came out and said, you do not want to go against us. We can beat you. So,
Situation. When we had the work session here, it was, you can see where they're coming from is, they're trying to create funds for mental health in Alaska, and that's kind of their sole gearing. If you got to do what's best, they're mandated to do what they can to make as much money as they can for the mental health system. So I understand that end of it, but by the same token, there is ambiguities here that come up that aren't going to make it easy for us locally too. So
I just wonder what their motives are. I mean, you give the state of Alaska to put a highway across your property. What could your possible future motives be for the property?
DOT doesn't have a history of letting go right of ways
You know,
usually. So
we're giving it up in
Yeah.
essence.
So Liz, is there a way we can put some pressure on DOT and mental health to get this resolved without having to create headaches for the property owners?
Well, they could resubmit the replat, and then we could just take care of it. without having to take any other steps. You know, that would be the easiest solution. I mean, I'll try and get with DOT and see
Okay.
what they say and see if I can find any other leverage points. And if I can't, I will just contact the trust land office and say that the planning commission really encourages you to resubmit these replats, which is what you had agreed to do.
Yep.
And we'll see we'll try nice first and see what happens.
Okay, that's probably the best way to go. All right. Our next meeting is May 14th at noon. Anybody have any idea if you're gonna be here or not?
I'm gonna be here, but I'm gonna be so busy, I won't know my own name.
We have business?
It's, yeah, it's Little Norway Week.
Yeah, I'll be here. So
Keep it short. I'll be here.
So
I'll
it's-
try.
it sounds like we've got a quorum at least. You think you'll be here?
Yeah, I actually don't know that we are going to have anything on the agenda, so it may be canceled
Yep.
for lack of agenda items. We'll see.
Okay,
Got till the end of the day.
Close to Dana.
yeah,
If I don't get anything by the end of the day, we'll call it.
all right.
Thank you.
Hopefully. We'll see.
Okay.
I'll turn
Um,
off my phone, yeah.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.